through a combination of technical errors and human errors, the worst commercial nuclear accident in the history of the nuclear power industry developed. That accident brought the core of Unit 2 reactor to within a half an hour of melting down. If it would have melted down, it would have probably have wiped out the entire eastern seaboard from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City. If the core would have melted down, it would have melted through the bottom of the containment building, which was a 4-foot thick concrete structure, and hit the water table beneath the island and exploded in radioactive steam. The radioactive steam would have then dispersed throughout the entire eastern seaboard.
The incident Randy King is referring to is the partial meltdown at 3 Mile Island, Unit 2. The incident had possibilities of killing thousands if not controlled, just as King stated. Due to human error and mechanical problems, the nuclear power plant, located just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, malfunctioned and led to a nationwide panic. This incident would stir multiple debates with nuclear control room operators, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, elected officials, and the community of Harrisburg. And it all started with a valve. Now rewind. Wednesday, March 28, 1979, 4 a.m. The meltdown at 3 Mile Island begins. A power plant's main function is to produce electricity. In simple terms, a plant works by first heating a nuclear reactor to boil water, producing steam. The steam moves a turbine, turning a generator and producing electricity. But the feed system at TMI, Unit 2, became blocked. Because there was no way for the heat to be removed, the core temperature rose and pressure built up inside. Automatically, the pilot operator relief valve opened so steam could escape. But temperatures continued to rise, so control rods were thrust into the reactor and the system stopped. The relief valve should have closed, but instead, it stuck open. But in the control room, it never even poses a threat. Instead, the automatic controls read leak, which turns on pumps to add water to the reactor. But multiple times before, the system had turned itself on without reason, and the operators, not knowing the valve is leaking water, turn off the pumps according to protocol. Within just a few minutes, all water around the reactor boils away, and the fuel rods begin melting. Control room operators should have caught the error and fixed it easily. In fact, a manager at TMI said, "Control room operators will know more about their jobs than they will anything else in their lives. The detailed knowledge required is at a different, much higher plane." Mike Gray, a writer on the events at 3 Mile Island, talks about this human error that caused the chain of events.
If the operators had not intervened in that accident at 3 Mile Island and shut off the pumps, the plant would have saved itself. They had thought of absolutely everything except what would happen if the operators intervened anyway.
It took 2 hours for operators to realize the valve was stuck open, but by the time they started adding water, the melting fuel rods were so hot they continued to heat up and become molten masses. By 9 a.m., 5 hours after the meltdown began, the steel, which protects the reactor vessel, kept radiation from leaking into the environment. Even though there was chaos in the control room, with over 50 control room operators scrambling around to figure out how to control everything, the community wanted answers. Despite his lack of experience with the press, Jack Herbine of Metropolitan Edison, Harrisburg's electric company, reassured the public that nothing was wrong and played down the extreme situation. Incidentally, a fear started to form within the Harrisburg community because they were uninformed.
This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. The world has never known a day quite like today. It faced the considerable uncertainties and dangers of the worst nuclear power plant accident of the atomic age. And the horror tonight is that it could get much worse. It is not an atomic explosion that is feared. The experts say that is impossible. But the specter was raised of perhaps the next most serious kind of nuclear catastrophe, a massive release of radioactivity. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission cited that possibility with an announcement that, while it is not likely, the potential is there for the ultimate risk of a meltdown at the 3 Mile Island atomic power plant outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Thursday, March 29th, Day 2. It was a laid-back day as engineers and public health officials were still trying to figure out the extent of the damage, but the possibility of radioactivity was very prominent. Day 3 was a completely different story. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC, realized that major radioactive gases had been released into the air, which made the community of Harrisburg panic. Reluctantly, Pennsylvania Governor Dick Thornburgh issued a general evacuation at a press conference. Nearly 140,000 people evacuated in response to uncertainty and the lack of consistency from the NRC.
Based on advice of the chairman of the NRC, I am advising pregnant women and preschool-aged children to leave the area within a 5-mile radius of the 3 Mile Island facility until further notice.
Later that night, though, Harold Denton, NRC's Director of Reactor Regulation, soon saved the day as he aided Governor Thornburgh. With his calming attitude and expertise, he soon reassured the town that 3 Mile Island was being taken care of. Mike Pentek, a reporter during the TMI panic, remembers how Harold Denton's presence automatically changed the chaos in the room.
My first look at Harold Denton was on a television set, and he's kind of this slow talking, my recollection is southern sounding kind of guy who will automatically put you at ease and makes you feel more comfortable and safe. And that's kind of how it felt. Well, finally somebody's here that we can trust.
We've assured ourselves that there is no imminent danger to the public.
That's Harold Denton.
As a result of the way the core is being cooled.
However, just as debates between government officials and the public were being settled, Roger Mattson, one of the NRC's top engineers, was analyzing data from the control room. His results concluded that there was a hydrogen bubble forming within the core that posed a high chance of explosion. In fact, everyone was sitting on a ticking time bomb that could rupture at any moment. But Victor Stello, another top NRC engineer, calculated that there was no hydrogen bubble and no chance for explosion. They debated whose calculations were correct, knowing the wrong answer could be dire.
Here comes Roger Mattson into the hangar, and here's Victor Stello, the other top NRC expert. And Stello says, "Mattson, you son of a bitch! How could you be spreading these rumors around about this hydrogen bubble?" And Mattson is saying, "You know, Victor, that bubble is ready to explode, and if you can't see that, you're crazy." And they're screaming back and forth at each other inside this hangar.
Late that night at a press conference, Harold Denton spoke and officially informed the public that there was no bubble, but Mattson still felt as if 3 Mile Island would explode at any moment. It was also at this conference that it was announced that President Jimmy Carter would be paying a visit to the plant the next morning. President Carter, NRC's Harold Denton, and Pennsylvania Governor Thornburgh all toured the nuclear power plant on Sunday, the 5th day of the incident. As they toured, Mattson and Stello still butted heads and debated to compare data. However, Stello found an error in calculations and the diplomatic solution that would soon end the whole ordeal. Mattson had been using the wrong formula. After seeing President Carter confident at the sight of 3 Mile Island, residents of Harrisburg felt as if it was all right to come back to their homes and resume life as normal. Eventually, cleanup at Unit 2 would take 4.5 years to complete at a cost of over $970 million. The catastrophe at 3 Mile Island all started with a system malfunction, but the effects included debates between the community, government officials, control room operators, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and even Metropolitan Edison. These debates ranged from how to fix the malfunction, whether to evacuate the radius, and even if there truly was a hydrogen gas bubble. But in the end, the diplomatic solution was to simply use the correct formula.